On this episode of the Inner Circle podcast, my man, Jimmy Rex, the man, the myth, and the investing legend out of Salt Lake City, Utah, is going to join us, talk to you about his purpose, hopefully tell us where he's been in the world, and get you closer to that financial freedom. The headstone has an infinite amount of space on it. Who is Jimmy Rex?
Wow. I want people to remember me as somebody that cared about people. I think my superpower is connecting other people. I care at a deep level. And somebody that didn't hold back, man. I go for it in life, and every successful person I know has one quality in common. They take action. And I think for me, for better or worse, I've just always been willing to take action and go for it. And so somebody that didn't leave anything behind, man, that's it.
I love that, dude. I love that. One of my guys, a good friend of mine, he actually has a franchise and he's actually in your group. I'll tell you who his name is afterwards. But it's interesting because he thought that he was going to join your group because of your entrepreneurial, right? Your business experience. So let's take a moment. Let's dive into that. If these guys go to Instagram and gals go to Instagram and they find Mr. Jimmy Rex, it says on there 30 plus companies that you've invested in. Mm-hmm. So what do you do to vet a company to where you're going to spend your time and your money?
It's a lot different now than it used to be. To be honest, I made a lot of poor decisions in investing. When I was young, I was pretty naive and I just assumed that everybody was good. I knew I had a good heart. I would never screw somebody over. And so I assumed that's how everybody was. And I found out very quickly, if you let people take your money, they will. And so, my first 10 investments I made all failed. I invested in a Ponzi scheme. I invested in a dental clinic that, dude, it never even existed. Like I gave somebody $50,000. The damn thing never existed. It was in Arizona. And I made a lot of bad moves, man. And unfortunately, we didn't have podcasts like this. We didn't have the information, I guess, that we have now when I was younger. And so I was just very naive. And at 31 years old, I had bought and sold a bunch of companies. I bought a bunch of real estate. I made some money, mostly lost money. And I finally got back to zero. I had gotten rid of all my debt, all my bad deals that were upside down in real estate. And I just said, I'm going to really go all in and learn how to do this the right way. And at that point, I really spent a lot of time investing in real estate education. Like I went and got my master's degree from Arizona State in real estate so that I could be the expert when it came to how to invest in real estate. And then from there, I started helping, and that's when my career really took off in real estate. I ended up selling, between me and my partner, Tyler, we've sold almost 7,000 houses to real estate investors. And I've, personally bought and sold hundreds of homes and own a bunch today. And, I learned how to invest correctly in real estate. So before I get into the business thing, I think for me in real estate, the most important thing was, there's a couple things I'd love to share those just because it was such an important piece. But number one is you have to be able to live with the worst case scenario. And too often we were buying stuff that if it went south, you're screwed, and you don't ever want to put yourself in that position. Number two was, if the market tanks tomorrow, am I still going to be glad I own this property? And that was the two things that I ran my filter through going forward. And then the third thing is got to have cash flow, right? Like it's got to make sense with the cash flow. And so when I learned those principles, I started investing the correct way in real estate. And honestly, all the other investments I made came from my real estate investments. I'd sell a property that I made money on, and then I'd buy a company or whatever. And I changed my criteria now. I used to be very willing to listen to almost anybody with whatever they were pitching from a business. But I learned very quickly that, I had probably the most successful venture capitalist in Utah on my podcast, a guy by the name of Greg Warnock. And he's kind of known as this legend in investing, the best in the history of Utah. And I asked him, I said, why do so many people lose money when they invest in companies? And he said, Jimmy, he said, my company vets 300 deals for every one that we actually invest in. I have an entire team of people looking at these. He said, the average investor, the average guy that just, a person that invests in companies, they're getting pitched 15 things in their life. It's your neighbor, it's your uncle, it's your brother, like whoever it is. And all of those deals have been passed over by all the smart investors by the time they get to you, person that, doesn't have access to better deals. And he said, the problem is you're just not seeing enough deals to pick a winner. And, I invested early on in a company, Stance Socks. huge success by all means. Jeff Curl like built this amazing company. And dude, they've never gone public. They've never had a sell. I've never had an opportunity to sell that stock. And so even though I invest in this company that's totally crushed it, I've never made a dollar. And so even when the company succeeds, a lot of times you don't get paid. And I invested in all these other companies. I invested in Nikola Motors, and at one point my investment was worth over $30 million. I couldn't sell it. I was tied up. And by the time I sold it, it had lost 80% of its value. But at the end of the day, that became a huge success for me even then. But a couple things that I looked for, like that particular one, I was looking at upcoming industries. If you were smart enough to invest, 3 years ago in AI, you're crushing it right now. If you were smart enough to invest in crypto 6 years ago, same thing. So if you can kind of see what's coming down the pipe, that's, I think, the number one thing to invest in. So that particular company, it was transportation, technology, and energy all in one. I was like, those are three giant sectors. That's why that one worked, even though it ended up kind of collapsing. It still made me over a 10x return on my money. And so I think when you're looking at what to invest in, you got to look for deficiencies in the marketplace. You got to look for opportunities that are coming up. But one thing that I tell people is, it's really difficult to pick a winner. I mean, it's really hard. And so for me, the way I do it now, because when I was younger, I just wanted to hit it rich. And I did, thankfully. Nikola Motors and Trada Software both went over $1 billion companies. I made a bunch of money. But I've invested in over 40 companies in my life, and I think like 4 have actually paid me any money back. Ooh. And so that's the point is I'm making, and a lot of those are still going. They might or they might not. The ones I made were huge successes. I hit some grand slams, but now I invest much differently. I'm investing so the last few things I did to invest was I wanted the immediate return that's safe. So for example, I just invested in the land that a Topgolf is leasing for their new building. So I get paid every single month, 18% a year on like clockwork. It's Topgolf. They're not going to default, right? Like that's one of the most safe investments you can make. I get that check every single month. I invested in a couple of restaurants that already had a track record of success. I get those checks every single month. I want mailbox money. I want money that's going to be there whether I'm working or not. And to be honest, like we have a restaurant I invested in Vegas, and for every 100 grand I put in, I make probably, just being honest, between 8 and 12 grand a month. And I don't even know the name of the general manager. Like if I want to go eat there, I got to call and get a reservation. I'm one of the main owners. I own 20% of that restaurant. But I want to invest in things that don't take my time or energy. I trust the people that are running it. And so I think one of the hard things is, a lot of people, they make it seem like they know what they're doing, but they don't really. But my number one thing I tell people now is if I can't see how I'm going to get paid every single month, like immediately, I'm probably not investing at this point, because you're always better off. And this is the most important thing I can tell people is you're almost always better off investing into your own company, because nobody's going to care about your money as much as you will. And you know where you can use that money to double, triple down. So now, like for right now, I'm investing. I have a company that flips homes. I got a couple $1 million invested in that. I have We Are the They. I'm investing big time back into that, right? Just hiring new employees, doing more things, building more technology. So when I invest back into those companies, I just make a much better return. That being said, I also invest for the network. So if I want to network with a certain group of people, I might throw 50 grand or 100 grand at their company just to get in with their graces and start to build into their network. And so for me, there's value in that as well. But that's really the criteria that I use. And I just tell people, now I've gotten really good at telling people. I used to just give people an opportunity. And the problem is when you're getting pitched from a company, it's a pitch man that's pitching it. And so they're really good at making it sound good. They all sound good, even though 1 out of 20 is going to actually make you any money. And so I've learned a new line. This is the line I tell all my, people that I coach what to say. Anytime somebody brings me a deal now, I say the exact same thing. I say, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm putting all my time, money, and energy into my own stuff. Ooh. And then it leaves them nowhere to go. They have nowhere to go with that. Because if people are bringing you the deal, it's probably not that good of a deal. If you recognize an opportunity and you go to them, you're 10 times more likely to find a good deal. So I always say, if somebody brings anything to me, it's a dead stop now. I just say, thank you for thinking of me. I'm putting all my time, money, and energy into my own thing. And sometimes they'll be like, well, can you look at the pitch deck? I want your opinion. I say time, money, and energy into my own thing. I don't have time to look at your pitch deck. And it's just, it leaves them nowhere to go, because I've invested in so many dumb things where I lost my money. because I just was trying to be nice, or I didn't want to look stupid. They send me the paperwork and I'm pretending like I know what the hell I'm doing. This is when I was much younger, you know. And I just lost a lot of money because of that. So that's kind of where I'm at now with investing.
I love it, man. On your social, and for everybody to see it, and just in life, I'm sure you act this way in life, and hopefully we'll be able to interact more. The authenticity and the vulnerability. You said before we started this, you're like, I've said it all, right? I've put my own story and all my wounds and scars on the table. You're talking to people who are entrepreneurs who have some scars, maybe some really big ones, some really deep ones, some really public ones. So how do you deal with that? How do you wrestle with that? And then how do you form your own story to where you control that narrative?
Yeah, well, so a couple things. So people are so afraid to be vulnerable because they think if people know my story, they're not going to like me or they won't love me or whatever. It's actually the opposite. And as you start to exercise that muscle and be a little bit vulnerable, you start to see, like, with the right people, they're going to really appreciate that, and they're going to trust you more, and you can trust the love that you get from them because they know who you are. And so vulnerability really is a superpower. Still need to be careful with who you're vulnerable with, right? Because you don't want people to use it against you. But what I've kind of discovered is, you know, when you're just putting yourself out there and you're authentic and you show like what it is. I'll give you an example. Like, some of the best TikTok pages right now are people that have gotten out of prison and they're sharing their stories. And I can't get enough of them. I watch them all the time. I'm like, they're very attractive, because here's the thing, dude, that people don't want to admit this, Travis, but everyone has their shit. Everyone, like the most put together people you've ever met, they got their shit. And so deep down, we appreciate when we can let our guard down around other people, because we're like, you know what, this guy's not going to judge me, or this person's not going to judge me. They have their own shit. And all of a sudden you're just connecting and you don't have to front with all this stuff. And the reason why people front, or they try to be cool, or they try to impress and all that stuff, is what they're really saying is, I promise I'm worthy to get to love. Like, please get to know me. I'm worthy enough to like, you know. But it comes off as like, look at my Lambo, or look at my shoes, or look at my money, or whatever it might be, or my bitches, you know, like they kind of throw these things out there. And all they're really saying is, please love me, but they don't know how to do it. And so when you can just open that space and you go, look, here's, you know, the first thing I do with my men's group, the very first weekend we all get together, I get 50 of them in a room and I share my whole story. And I share the not pretty parts of it, man. I share the frustration, the pain, the girls laughing at me because they can see up my shorts when I'm 12 years old. I talk about the dates that didn't work out. I talk about, you know, all the failures with romance and different things in business, and partners that took advantage of me, friends that took advantage of me. And it's emotional still. I still get choked up talking about it. By the time I'm done, I then invite a couple of them to, like, I do this game called Step in the Circle. And I actually learned this. I had the chance to go to Pelican Bay. I don't know if you knew this or not, and volunteer as an entrepreneur. We went and taught the inmates there at Pelican Bay. And we played this, not game, but kind of a game, where this exercise where all the entrepreneurs got on one side and all the
On the
inmates
line, on the tape?
Yes, a step in the line.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I do it with my group, but a little different. So we get in a circle and I read different questions. And if it applies to you, you step in the circle.
Oh,
You know, and I read it, and it starts out like, you know, if your parents divorced when you were a kid, step in the circle. If you've ever been to jail, step in the circle. If you've ever been cheated on, step in the circle. All of a sudden, before too long, everybody starts crying, right? Because everybody realizes, and I ask a question, I said, if you feel alone often, please step in the circle. 48 out of the 50 guys step in the circle. Single, married, religious, you know, successful, none of it mattered. Like, everybody has these feelings. And then I said, you know, if you've had a porn issue, step in the circle. If you have something right now, you probably got to go tell your spouse or girlfriend about to get back into integrity, step in the circle. And by the time we're done, all of a sudden, everybody's just like, wow, this is so freeing to be in a room where I'm not alone. All of a sudden you realize these issues I'm dealing with, so are a lot of other people. And the beauty of this is, once you've kind of let yourself be seen and people still love you, they still appreciate you, you feel seen, and you will do anything for those people. And so we do that exercise. And by the time these guys are done, I explain to them that, like, when you're hiding behind something, when you're inauthentic or you're not in integrity, the love you receive, you don't trust it, because you, in the back of your mind, all you can think. I had one of the guys in the group, he said that, you know, he'd been married his whole life. He's had these things he didn't tell his wife. He felt like he probably should have. And he came to me and he said, dude, I've never had a day of my life where I could celebrate, because every time people were celebrating me or honoring me in any way, all I thought was, if they really knew who I was, they wouldn't be celebrating me. And he said he went home and told his wife some things, got back into integrity. And he said when he told her, she was pissed. For 4 hours, she wouldn't talk to him. And then she came over and loved on him. And she said, hey, thank you for sharing this with me. I'm so sad you've been going through this alone, that you couldn't come to me about this. Let's work through this. And he said, Jimmy, and I get emotional thinking about it, because he says, Jimmy, for the first time in my life, I knew my wife loved me. That was the first time I felt it. So if we're inauthentic, we're out of integrity, all the love we receive, it's like a bucket with holes in it. We don't trust it. We can't receive it. And so that's the whole reason I teach these guys to be vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity, so that you can actually trust the love you get, and then you can really learn to love yourself.
My gosh, bro. I love everything about it. There's so much to unpack there, so much to unpack. And especially with the loving yourself, right? I feel so often that the when you open up the camera of social media, or whether you're just staring at the neighbor or comparison 101, you're really projecting that inability of yourself, the lack thereof, the lack of that love. And so sometimes I think that we're talking about spouses. Sometimes I think that we're just coexisting, right? The woman is wishing that a man would be a certain way. The man is wishing that he could be authentic and honest with her. And we just have these two partners that are coexisting. They're not really living a life of absolute fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I love everything you're talking about.
That person's not completely safe. Like if it's not, your best friend or your wife or whatever, you're wasting your time in that relationship, because all the real gold is found when you can just be, and you don't have to show up as anything else. And being in real estate as long as I was, it was funny because I was also the guy in town that was the most connected in the single scene. And so anytime somebody was going through a divorce or they were fighting, I was the first call, right? A, I need to know how much we can sell our house for. I need you to help me buy a new one. And B, hey, do you have anybody you can line me up with? So I would see people. I mean, this happened a dozen times, Travis. People would be posting pictures of them on their vacation or in their family. And I'm over here like, y'all are lying. I know you're about to go through a divorce, and you just kind of start to take it for what it is. But, I always just really preach that, like, I know I used to do it. Like, I used to feel like I wasn't good enough. My dad told me I wasn't good enough when I was 14 years old. I wrote it on my hat. And, for 3 years in high school, I wore that hat every day to prove him wrong. But what I accidentally did was affirm to myself at such a high level that I wasn't good enough. And I became an achiever. And so in order to get love, I had to win or be the best. And so I wanted to be the best realtor. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to date all the hottest girls in town. I wanted to have the best parties. And God bless me, I was innocent, but I was going about this all out of fear. And so it was really gross. Like, I look back at the way I was doing social media 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and before this experience where I overcame this. And, it was through a really beautiful meditation and psychedelic experience. I got to see my hat as an adult and go, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I had this message just come that said, hey, this has served you, but it no longer does. Let it go. And I was able to quit trying to prove myself worthy of love. I'm just worthy. And, when you're not doing it out of fear, you can come from love. You just make so many different, better decisions.
Golly, brother. That's so good. Let's unpack fear for a moment. Fear, for so many people who haven't really experienced much in life. The fearful guy who's living his 9-to-5 paycheck because he's too fearful to start his own business, or the fearful gal, or how do we overcome that fear? How do we turn off the social media? How do we turn off our own brain? I mean, you were talking about a 2 million-year-old brain that's pre-wired to keep us away from the streets and away from the burner on the stove. But I think we start living just on the other side of that fear, no?
Yeah, I mean, everything we want is on the other side of fear. We've heard that a million times, but it's very true. Part of my coaching program, I make the guys do really scary things, because every time it's a muscle, again, that you can exercise. So, I make them jump off this 300-foot rope swing cliff where they feel like they're falling to their death, and then it catches them, and I have them, I'm taking 70 guys to run with the bulls next month in Spain. We swam with tiger sharks last year in the middle of the ocean with no cage. We just do these crazy things, because every time you push past that fear, you get a little bit better at it. But, the way that you get through it, I think, is through gratitude. Gratitude cannot coexist with any negative emotion. And so anytime you're going to fear or lack or jealousy or envy or any of those emotions, the way to overcome it, and like you said, we have this 2 million-year-old brain, right? It's been hardwired to look out for what's wrong. It's afraid. It's looking, because that's how we survived when we had freaking, wild animals running around. We're trying to keep from being killed or whatever. And the same reactions will happen to us about going to approach a woman to ask her on a date. Like, there's so much fear and all these things that come into place. But the way to rewire that is through gratitude, because gratitude can't coexist with these negative emotions. And so when a daily practice of gratitude and being in a state of gratitude and just writing down things you're grateful for, things that you are, that you love and things like that, I think that's the way through, because if anytime you go to fear, you're going to end up, in trouble.
Yeah. And is that how you get through the storms of life, or do you have other tools in your toolbox?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of tools. One of the things, I mean, I can show you real quick, like to make
Yeah.
real change, there's 5 pillars in my program that we really emphasize. And I
Yeah.
think this is the true formula for change. I've thought about this a lot. I've really put a lot of emphasis in this. Number 1 is you got to take a moral stand. You got to change whatever behaviors are bad, right? And that's actually number 2 is change your behavior. So number 1 is like decide you're going to quit whatever, right? Whatever actions you need. And then, number 2, change the behavior. So we all have habits, and unfortunately we don't fall to our goals, we fall to our habits. Whatever your habits are, that's what you'll end up doing. And so you got to change your behaviors. I've completely changed my behaviors over the last couple of years because I want to have more peace in my life. I want to be more grounded. So every single morning I really do get up now. I go for a 45-minute walk outside. I take my water, I do a cold plunge. I read for 30 minutes. I do meditation. I do my gratitude exercises. I do my vision board. And by the time that's done, it's from 7 to 10 every day is blocked off. I've rewired myself for success in that day. It's really hard for me not to start the day in a good place because of that, right? What most people do is they start up the day, they get up, they're like kind of already dreading getting up. Then by the time they get up, they're checking their phone, they're immediately checking shit that doesn't matter, and they start getting this state of depression or whatever it might be. And so all these behaviors matter, and what you do on a daily basis, the habits that you create are going to create you. And so if you want drastic changes, you've got to make drastic changes. And I always tell people life is kind of like a funnel. If you think about it like this, like where people get in trouble is they focus on the bottom, what's coming out of the funnel. And the problem is by then it's too late. The cake's been baked, right? All you can focus on is what goes in the funnel. And so if I can throw positivity, I mean, if you saw like my walls and my books, and it's hilarious, like I'm just all day long filling myself with positive things. If you fill yourself with enough positive things, something positive is going to come out. But if you're putting negative things and bullshit in all day long, that's what's going to come out. And so we control what goes in. We don't control the result. And, it really can be very freeing in life. One of the things I say is, the secret to life is to remove expectations of what things are supposed to be, because you don't control what comes out of it, but you do control what you put in. And when you can really emphasize that, then you can just kind of take everything else as what it is. You're like, okay, I mean, listen to your story, I'm just like, man, I've never been tested like that. I don't know if I could deal with, something like that. But at the end of the day, you ultimately get to decide what that means. It can either be your best gift and blessing, or you can be the thing that ruins you.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's so interesting because that's how we started before this. And now when my wife and I meet new people, it's literally the first thing that I start with. I mean, you can Google it, and I've been in Forbes and all the other BS, but like the neighborhood people or the people from the school who don't know any better, it's like, hey, here's the backstory. I spent 17,000 hours trying to find myself. And so I don't drink coffee in the morning. I don't need to, because I've never been this high in my life, because it's been taken away from me. And so when you start people there, they're like, what the hell is this guy on? And the answer, it goes back to the word that you mentioned, which was gratitude. It's like, I know that if you and I are lucky, white North American dudes, we get 78 birthdays. Right?
You get about 28,000 days,
There it is. So it's like, what are we going to do to spend it there? And I loved your time, money, resources, because you say it, I say it, but it's like, where are you really going to spend it to make the most impact? Where is it? So many of these guys that are going to work 9 to 5, they're just dicking around. You know it. I know it, from Amazon to TikTok to Instagram. Then they come home and pretend that they're so busy. They can't set the tone when they walk in the door. They can't be present with the little ones. They can't have 90 minutes of sexual intimacy with the wife. And this is the erosion of what's happening in America. And I think it's just a microcosm of us not being honest with ourselves, not really saying, I'm going to spend my time wisely and my resources wisely, because they could all end tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had more opportunity. I mean, we live like kings in 2023 in America. Think about it. Dude, yesterday, I woke up, and girlfriends hanging out. We're just laying there, and I said, let's just order some breakfast. And some college kid drops off exactly what I want for breakfast 30 minutes later. I had a flat tire a couple of weeks ago. I call an Uber for the girl. I call an Uber for myself. I called my buddy to come pick up my car. By the time I woke up and went outside, my car was back in my driveway with a fixed tire. Like, it inconvenienced me for about 4 minutes. We live in a time where everything's in abundance. And so that's why I purposely tell people, like, you have to purposely get uncomfortable. You have to push yourself, because we were never meant to have access to all this. You were never supposed to see 20,000 naked women at the touch of your phone if you wanted to, right? Like, maybe see 2 in your lifetime. You were never supposed to have whatever food you wanted. Like 44% of Americans are obese. Like, that's insane. And so you start thinking about all these things, and what it is, comfort really is the killer. And so, like, look for ways to push yourself, to get yourself uncomfortable, to just stretch yourself. And if you don't do it, like, when you're hard on yourself, life is easy on you. But when you're easy on yourself, life will be very tough on you. And so that's, I think, where I, try to help these guys understand, like, it might sound nice to just half-ass your day or go through life or just kind of, but ultimately this is life. This is all we have. And so for me, I'm like, shit, man, this is not a dress rehearsal. Like, this is my life. Like, I'm going to do some crazy shit. And if I screw up, cool. Like, we'll just go on to the next thing. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit around. Like, I can't waste 2 hours without feeling like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like, if there's like certain shows that come on TV, like The Simpsons is one of them, or like Seinfeld, if those come on and I like hear it, I like have like a trigger reaction, because I'm like, I'm wasting my life. What are you doing? And there's so much you can do, and there's so many opportunities, but ultimately so many people are just half asleep, just daydreaming through life. They really are.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. One last question. I want to go back to something that you said earlier, and you talked about love. I think that a lot of times we don't believe we're deserving. I think it's most of the time. We're brushing our teeth at night. We're judging ourselves for whatever it might be, how you yelled at the kids, the 10 extra pounds, or what I call the first world problems. And so when you're talking to these folks, when you're talking to your guys in the WAP movement, We Are the They, when you're talking to the world, how do we start to love ourselves?
Well, the first one is to make a decision that you're going to work on it. I remember when a buddy of mine asked me several years ago, we were laying there, we were actually on a boat, a houseboat. He said, Jimmy, do you love yourself? And I said, I think I do. He said, well, if you think you do, you probably don't. I was like, okay, well, what does that look like? And then he said, it's a process of like figuring it out, like talking to God, asking, like sitting down, like, and it was weird. Like, little by little, I started thinking of these things, and I started doing therapy, and breath work was a big one for me to unlock these things that I didn't know about myself. And all of a sudden, I got to a point where, like, God, I think I love myself, but I still was self-sabotaging. I'm like, no, there's something there that I still don't love. And I had an epiphany, and I was like, oh, the part of me and I just kept working on it, by the way. There was a lot of work, a lot of thought went into it, a lot of meditation and breath work, like I said, just working on this. And ultimately I got to the spot where I went, oh my gosh, I figured out the last piece I don't love about myself. And what an easy way to tell is, what do you despise in other people? Because whatever you despise in others, you probably despise in yourself. It's kind of a mirror. And I realized that weakness was what I despised in others. And I was like, oh, the part of me I don't love is the part of me that's weak. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I've never allowed myself for 5 minutes to be sad, lonely, depressed, whatever else. I'm like, I hate weakness. Even as I thought of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to love the weak part of me. And I was like, gross, I don't want to love that part of me. But then I was like, no, I need to. And I just cried one night for hours. I just let myself be sad. And like, now I can experience those emotions and let them happen. And I don't live there, but I can go there for an hour and experience it and feel it. And I just feel like I feel a lot more than ever before now. And I think, so I guess what I'm saying is, like, for me, it was a couple of years process of just really trying to figure this out. Like, hey, why do I self-sabotage? Why do I react? What triggers me? Like, I think when you ever get triggered by something, like, man, write that shit down. All right, what just happened there? Like, why was that such a reaction, right? Why did I have to take that way? Why did that have to set me off? And then you start to look at what happened in my past or my life. I mean, we all have traumas and things that have happened. Like, if your parents were perfect, that's your freaking trauma, because no one will ever compare, And it's like, we all have stuff. And so you just start working through it. And little by little, you kind of really start to appreciate yourself and love yourself. And the thing that's really helped me, like I said, my morning routine is spending time alone, just being with me. And as I'm sitting with me and just being comfortable, like I remember I had a coach that was brilliant a couple of years ago. He used to make me go to movies by myself. I had to like go to the movies by myself. And I remember I'd feel so stupid. I'm like, oh, I hope nobody I know walks in, And then I started eating by myself. And then I started traveling by myself. So I went to a bunch of different countries and went by myself and just went and spent time with me. And I think that's how you start to do it, man.
Golly, man, so much wisdom here. I am super grateful. I hope everybody reaches out to you. I think your Instagram is the best place to find you, but where do you want to send people to?
Yeah, I put everything on my Instagram. So like, my books, my speaking, any of my podcasts, all that stuff is all in my Instagram. So Mr. Jimmy Rex is my Instagram. Um,
MR.
yep. And I connect with everybody. If you ever have any questions, reach out. Happy to get back to you. I never miss a message. I get back to everybody that's a real message, and it's me doing it. And yeah, man, I just try to give back and help anywhere I can.
You've done it, man. You're an example and a pillar, and continued success, and God bless, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Good luck to all you guys.
Thank you.